Okay, everyone, welcome to another one of your monthly streams with Josh Levitan of Cyber Trading University. Josh Levitan is a seasoned stock trading instructor and coach at Cyber Trading University, boasting 10 years of trading experience and 8 years of teaching expertise. Trained by the renowned Fausto Pugliese, Josh specializes in momentum-derived entry strategies utilizing an array of tools from Bookmap. His expertise primarily focuses on stocks such as AMD and TSLA, along with small cap stocks showing news-driven activity in the pre-market hours, making him a valuable resource for aspiring traders. You can follow Josh from the... Josh, could you turn to the contact slide, please?
It's here right now. It should be showing.
Brilliant. So you can follow Josh on YouTube at youtube.com/cybertradingu, Twitter, cybertradingu, or through their website at cybertradinguniversity.com. We're just going to have to quickly do the disclosure here. General disclosure, all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and digital currencies involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. And lastly, we are trying to get you all to join our Discord. So if you scan the QR code that is on your screen at the moment, you'll be able to go to our verification portal on Discord, verify your Bookmap account. If you're not registered at bookmap.com yet, head there and register. It is free for a free tier subscription, and then you'll be able to get verified into the server and you'll get the best experience when watching these sessions. So over to you, Josh. Thanks very much.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. And to Dan and to Bruce and all of the fun folks over at Bookmap, I always appreciate the chance to be on your platform here at least. So let's jump right into it. I've had a long night, not much sleep, and with that, I have a little extra caffeine in me. So if I talk a little too quickly, my apologies here, but that's because we are so excited with what we're seeing here on Bitcoin. Let me just ask to begin here, for all of us on Discord, all of us just collectively here, who here owns, whether it be Bitcoin, whether it be an ETF like IBIT, whether it be Robinhood, Coinbase, who here just owns anything even remotely Bitcoin related? Let me know. Here in the chat, here on YouTube, all of us here as a collective, let me know. Because, of course, with Bitcoin continuing to break all-time highs, the key is going to be knowing where our resistances are going to be and where they should be, where we should expect to anticipate them. So when a stock breaks all-time highs, there's no historical ceiling to work with from the chart. And especially with Bitcoin here, well, it only makes it more volatile given how active Bitcoin has been recently and to see the shakes that we've had up until it just broke resistance here. So what I want to do is go through Bookmap and show where the iceberg orders are often to be as where they have been in the past. For instance, of course, as you could see here, right at 110,000. That's where we most recently had our strongest sell wall up until the breakout. So that's 610 Bitcoin worth. So just to do a little calculation right now, give me a quick second here, 610 Bitcoin times $110,000 per Bitcoin, that's $67 million worth of money, right? So we should anticipate for that to be a clear resistance to work with. The more times that resistance gets pressed and poked at, the more times buyers smash into that sell wall, it's weakening and it's going to get completely broken through. Now, that's the general idea. But one concept to think about here is that if we happen to have an iceberg, a big resistance wall here at 110,000, oftentimes every 10,000 points on Bitcoin, let's say from 100,000, once it broke over that, like, a month or so back, it continued to kind of squeeze in this range. 110,000 is our next resistance. If I go up on this heat map here, you're not going to see like too many, orange lines, maybe one or two over time. But you should expect to have resistance right around 120,000, right there, seeing about 415 Bitcoin. The further we go up, it's not going to show as relevant because you're probably going to have orders pop up over time at these price levels. But this is just a psychological, price range that you want to work with. 110,000, 120,000 after that, of course, 130 from there. Now, otherwise, though, outside of just showing Bookmap, we could go into the icebergs, but on top of that, the CVP column, the chart volume profile, that played a pretty big part in seeing Bitcoin begin to make the push up to 110,000 here. But I think the thing on everyone's mind is, where do we have resistance next? Well, we did just show resistance at 120,000, right? Right here. So, of course, a lot of us here that come into any sort of trading, investing, you're more natural and used to seeing just a chart, a regular graph go, from left to right, the stock or the asset here, Bitcoin, this is, of course, going up and down. Now, otherwise, though, what we want to do is look to see where we have ranges. So what I'm going to show you here is from TradingView. This is just my TradingView charts, and pretty easy to just show this range. So I kind of made a modified Fibonacci retracement, extended it even up. But what I want to do is show the range here between 91,000 roughly, this grayish line. It was holding support there for about 3.5 months before it broke lower. Well, that and then this resistance. This built a range for a long period of time in this bull market. So what you want to think about is, what's the midway point in that range? Because that will dictate whether we have potential continuation here or not. I mean, of course, it's easy to say this, that it ended up breaking down over time from the beginning of this year. If you keep your ear to the floor with news here, I'm sure that you can anticipate that was based off the initial Trump tariff stuff going on. People didn't like what they were hearing at first. Market dropped. All right, well, Bitcoin went with it. But it's just to say, if it's not holding this midline as support, then you better get out, right? Now, long story short, it ended up dropping, moving back up, and now we're at all-time highs. So what I want to try and do is extrapolate this range and look to show, where do we have potential targets ahead based off this range that we've built. So from 91,000 to 109, that's about an 18K range from head to toe here. So what I did was just plot another 18,000 points ahead. That's your next major level, right off of 127 roughly, give or take, I'm sure, 1,000 or so. It's not going to be perfect. But point being is that, in accordance to the range that was built, is our next major resistance ahead. Now, in between the 127,000 and the resistance that we previously had here, the 109, well, that's about 9,000 points, in between. So that's roughly around 118K. This matters for the following reason. It's not just one price level that's going to dictate support resistance. It's going to be a couple of prices or even a few prices together that provide that stronger area. So we have 118,000 as just like a chart level, a technical level, you could say. Well, hey, you know what? I'll use that to complement the iceberg, the big sell wall that's there at 120. So for right now, if you're asking me, like, what's the next, move up for Bitcoin? Where do we see the next major resistance here on this trade? Well, 128,000 would really be that number. But, if you're looking for a price level that likely is going to serve as resistance at first, where you're likely to have some turbulence at first, I'm going to say between 118 and 120,000. I'm sure there's a good chance it runs right into the sell wall and then back down. That's basically what happened here at first off of 110. Kind of went right into it here, pulled back, and then we ended up breaking higher. So, that's my overall thought process, at least for now, in Bitcoin. Over time, I think that we've built up too much around this 109. The previous all-time highs that we had, it's a 5-minute chart, right here. We made a pretty clean break above resistance, and we closed above this resistance, most importantly. So that's where I at least feel confident to say that we're likely to make a move up here sooner than later. The goal is to now see this at least flip into support, but we've already started this daily candle off really well, unless if just some bad news comes out, which, of course, anything I guess could happen. But, unless if bad news comes out, there's not much stopping this from making a pretty easy move up towards the next resistance. All right, so, hey, even if you're not a fan of Bitcoin, how could that, factor in for your own trading if you don't buy spot Bitcoin itself? Well, there's alternatives, as we've been talking about here. I always have the pleasure of coming on this platform and just discussing not just Bitcoin, but stocks too. So IBIT is the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. This moves pretty much perfectly with regular Bitcoin. I'm going to say as well as you could ever anticipate an ETF too. So if you follow the Bitcoin chart, you're going to have a pretty easy ability to not just swing trade IBIT, but even if you're just trying to day trade it, you could look to do that as well. For instance, even I'll just show a good demonstration on that as well here. I mean, it's more flat today. Definitely a lot more flat today. Holding support, but not really breaking out here at the time. Yesterday, and from even the day before yesterday, you saw a nice cleaner trend. Things were, progressing along pretty nicely here. So by the time it ended up beginning to break above resistance, we'll just say like around here. Looks like it built a top here at the time, pulled back. This is yesterday in the morning at like 10:35, 11 o'clock. So where was Bitcoin there? Was there resistance at any point on that graph from the last day or so? That's what we're going to basically be asking here. So let's see. That was back yesterday at 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, right? As we said. Well, I'll tell you, that seems to be right where this was beginning to make the move up towards 110,000. It got pretty damn close. So already at 11 o'clock, it was running up, pulling back. That's pretty much where we were here. Now, by the time it ends up breaking higher, you still have to worry, though, about Bitcoin trying to break above the resistance at 110,000. So it got pretty close to it. And by the time it gets pretty close, that's where you look to try and sell your position afterwards. So the IBIT was a nice trade, at least as it broke higher, but it failed to break above the resistance that we had there. So that's how you could basically use to correlate Bitcoin with the IBIT ETF. Now, the only other thing with Bitcoin stocks, just so everyone realizes, they're not all going to move with Bitcoin. That's an ETF. So that's more correlated to it than anything. Robinhood's a very healthy chart. It's a great chart to look at long term because it's looking to break all-time highs pretty soon. As far as a swing trade goes, that's one of the first things you want to look at. If it's breaking 52-week highs, all-time highs possibly otherwise. So, there's a few out there that are Bitcoin related that are looking pretty strong. Coinbase, with the move that we had back up over the last month, has gotten to be a lot stronger. This could position itself for a strong breakout soon enough. MicroStrategy is, one of the more popular ones. There's actually a new one that came out pretty recently, or at least it's more OTC. This one's crazy. I mean, I don't even know if I have the data here, Dan, to show this on Bookmap as much, unfortunately. But there's a Japanese company, Bitcoin treasury company, that's OTC, and I think it's called MetaPlanet, MTPLF. Get a load of this. This became OTC back from the end of last year, but look what happened over the last 2 weeks here with Bitcoin breaking all-time highs. This thing went berserk. So I don't think I have the data to show OTC, at least myself here, if you guys even have it. We don't really focus too much on OTC at Cyber Trading University. But just to say, though, man, this is a hell of a move. So looking at some of those Bitcoin trades, the key is just to focus on the long-term graph. It doesn't need to align perfect with Bitcoin's move, but as long as the chart is healthy. Now, where I stress that is not all of them are healthy. The mining stocks have not really been doing too good since the last year and a half. It's still been making lower highs on CLSK, Mara, Riot, Blockchain. All these are companies that we day trade here at Cyber Trading, but we don't swing trade them yet because they're just not as healthy looking compared to the others. So if you are looking to dip your hand into the Bitcoin hat, my best recommendation again would be just going with IBIT. This is the best one that correlates. But now, otherwise, though, if you don't like Bitcoin at all, and thankfully we've had some great news that came out recently over the last 24 hours with AI and with NVIDIA, this company here that they've partnered with, NVTS. It's not so much even a small cap stock. Well, even if we could say it is, it's not low float. This is not a low float stock. It's 139 million shares in the float. I would say like a 10 million share float. It's pretty small. 3 million, something like that. Something that's very high risk in that regard. But for NVTS, hey, I didn't know this stock at all, and news came out at 4 o'clock, a little afterwards in the afternoon yesterday. Made a pretty good breakout. So what I like to do here, outside of discussing like Bitcoin, is going through trades that ended up running already and discussing, much like we teach at Cyber Trading University, how we could best plan these levels out ahead of time. All right. So real quick, I'm always on top of the chat right now, just seeing if there's any questions that come in. Always let me know. I see a bunch of us here just joining us, not just on YouTube right now, but as well as in our Discord here at Bookmap. So the way that I like to think of this is, Just came off a coaching session, one-on-one private session with one of our students just early on this, so it's pretty funny. But think of yourself like a federal judge. I'm sure we might even have a couple lawyers and maybe a judge or two tuning in right now, Dan. But just to say, though, that we want to think of ourselves like a judge, where in order to make our verdict, we got to have as much evidence as possible, right? So we're not just looking at Exhibit A and that's it. We're not just looking at Exhibit A or B. We're going through A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the whole lineup here as far as every piece of evidence that we can gather to make our conviction, right? So for a less expensive stock like NVTS, right away, when this starts to pop, I'll instantly just align myself with the dollar price levels, $3, $4, $5, etc. So we'll even just kind of skip 3. We'll just do 4. We'll do 5, and then 6 ahead there at least to begin. So that's where we assume iceberg levels are, much like we talked with Bitcoin and those $10,000 price levels there. Well, hey, with a cheaper stock like this, every $1, you're more likely to find an iceberg, a larger order on the bid or ask collectively. So let's find out. We'll go back on the NVTS here and see where we had our evidence. How many exhibits do we have here to kind of go through? Well, right away you could tell we had big resistance into the close here before the news even came out. Of course, it broke over it. Here. Uh-oh. Dan, give me a quick. Looks like my freezing up a little bit on me. That one's on me.